If you are watching this video, this is the proponent side of animal testing for July 2025. Okay. So just to preface this, this is one of those topics that's really kind of hard to wrap your head around um, because it does involve cruelty and abuse to animals. So many people believe um, animals have no rights. They were created for food. Most people, eat animals, and that we are under no ethical or moral obligation to protect them and keep them safe. Anybody who has a pet, I have a cat and a dog. I used to have two golden retrievers, but one passed away last year. Knows that animals are living creatures who have a brain. They can think, they can love. Um, they are fun, they are engaging, they do experience pain and suffering, and they do suffer the same diseases as humans. So I'm going to start with a really quick video just to kind of show you the clinical setting of research.
We use animal models in our research because
Very
we
clinical.
can experiment with new treatments in animals before these treatments are really ready for the clinic. And we're able to then really get answers that we hope will allow us to take the information back to the clinic and come up with new and even better treatments.
We can't say whether something new is safe or whether it works unless it's gone through a proper set of tests. These tests actually have to begin at the level of animals, so it's very important to do that.
We're actually reproducing the cause of the disease in the animal model, and that is a tremendous advantage.
Fruit fly models, worm models, mouse models, rat models. You can tweak the system with genetics that you can't do in other systems. The reason we study these living systems is because they have the appropriate structure so that there's cells that talk to each other. There's different cell types within a given region. When you have it in a dish, it's much more difficult. You can look at a single cell type, but not necessarily the complexity that happens in the brain.
With an animal model, we can look for visible changes, microscopic changes, biochemical changes within the mice that would be impossible to do in a living human being, for instance, and would also be very difficult to do, say, in a tissue culture dish.
Many people who don't understand animal research will say, well, why don't you use computer models? Why don't you use cells growing in a dish? The problem with computer models is they have to model something. You have to understand the process before you can actually use a computer to further understand it.
We've made a great deal of progress in developing animal models for Alzheimer's disease, such that we can now take a human gene from families who have what's called familial Alzheimer's disease, where this amyloid protein is deposited in the brain. We can take the gene out of people, put it into a mouse, and those mice will develop that same protein in the brain as if the mice were developing Alzheimer's disease. We can develop various therapeutics, drugs, to try to remove that protein from the brain, or perhaps we can block it being deposited in the brain. All kinds of combination therapies can be tested in animals relatively quickly, and then we translate that into humans.
Think about this in terms of if this was your child, and what would you really need to see in terms of evidence before you're ready to try this experimental treatment in your child?
If we can demonstrate that the human nervous system works like
just another minute, because here's the reason I'm letting it go a little bit farther.
And there's lots of things that we can study in animals that we can't in humans that give us the information that we need. What we can learn from the rodent models, we could never learn in the human being.
Animal models are critically important for any research in this field to move forward. You can do modeling using other mechanisms and means, but in this instance, certainly the animal modeling has been critical to our progress, our discoveries, and now our ability to really change lives of people who are living with spinal cord injury today.
I think it's important to understand that when we test in laboratory animals, it's not just people who benefit from that. It is animals that benefit just as well. Our pet population gets many of the same diseases that people get. In the process, we're not only benefiting humans, but we're benefiting the animals.
Okay, I stopped right there on purpose because I'm going to guess that you were fine with the rats. Yeah, you were fine with the fruit flies. Then when we start getting into the cute animals, the cats and the dogs and the chimpanzees, and that's where we start to question animal testing. Okay, so let's break it down here for a second. If you have the outline in front of you, and you should, I'm not going to share the screen yet. What I am going to share with you is how I connected this, how I thought about leading you into this conversation today. Human beings have been debating the ethics of animal testing for centuries. I did say centuries. One side of the argument proposed and rejected by 17th century French philosopher Rene Descartes suggested animals lacked a mind, were incapable of conscious thought, and unable to feel pain. So Descartes and his assistants would conduct live vivisection, that is, dissecting an animal while it was alive. And they would do it in audiences. They would ignore their cries of pain and involuntary movements of suffering, believing they didn't feel it. How they could think that is beyond me. Suffice it to say, modern philosophy and science have rejected his viewpoint. So when I showed you that video in a very clinical biomedical research setting, you can see um, that that is purposeful, that is designed, and they understand what they're doing to animals, but they understand that there's a higher purpose. Um, Scientists do understand animals can think, reason, learn, and feel pain. Um, but there's been a shift in the way that animals have been treated since the time of Descartes, especially when it comes to experimentation on them. So, why does animal testing exist? Because scientists have always held the belief it is sometimes necessary to sacrifice an animal if they can contribute to human medical advancements. Bottom line, this is the entire proponents' argument. And not only have they, as you saw in the video at the very end, contributed to medical human advancements, every medical human advancement um, can also translate to animal human advancement. Um, there are ethical considerations which preclude testing on a human being, obviously, which means animals take a human's place. Animal rights activists, however, have fought to secure the rights of animals by ensuring regulations have put in place to protect them. Any of you that have done the zoos with me, we've argued zoos. I haven't been to the zoo since, and I have no plan on ever going again after doing that essay because of the way they treat animals in the zoo. They treat animals as if they are property for amusement, and they don't treat them well, even in the best of them that are regulated. So, according to the Animal Welfare Act, 1966, standards have been put in place. Any research facility must submit a proposal to be approved by an institutional animal care and use committee. They have to meet the stipulations. So, an adequate cleanliness, enclosures, feeding them food, water, optimal temperature, um, humane treatment. It's a blanket term. There are research facilities today who purposely ignore animal testing guidelines and research using perversions, using um, torture and abuse and cruelty of animals. And this is why we have an argument, right? Is that ethical? Is that a moral thing to do? So if you go, now I'm going to share the screen. Where did that go? Okay, there we go. I'm going to share with the articles. And now I want to tell you I did something different, everybody. I'm going to stop share just for a minute so I can explain what I did. Kind of reached a point where, students who had been with me a while were doing really, really well. on turning in essays. And unfortunately, newer students were really struggling. So what I thought I would do is change it up again a little bit and simplify what I'm doing. So let me share this screen with you. I would ask that you read all 8 pages. So if you'll notice here, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, just a tiny bit of 9. I don't think it's asking too much to read 8 pages when someone has gone to the time and effort to find articles for you. And I don't think 8 pages is asking too much, and it is fascinating information. I think when you are only reading the highlighted information, you're missing information. You're missing transitions and ways to connect ideas because you're taking it out of context. So please read all 8 pages before you um, even begin to write the essay. And I'm guessing that will take you 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And I guarantee it took me hours to put it all together. So I think it's the least you can do. Secondly, I'm going to go through and you'll notice everything is yellow because this is only the first side of the argument. These are only articles for the first side of the argument. Okay, I'm actually going to start on page 3 because I want to really kind of focus in on really why are we even talking about the benefits of animal testing? Animal research and testing is behind almost every prescription medicine available today. The aspirin, the Tylenol, the cough medicine was tested on an animal first. By the way, everything you wear everything detergent, that you wash your clothes in, your body wash, your deodorant, your shampoo, your conditioner, um, all tested on animals first because the US FDA, Food and Drug Administration, requires animal testing to ensure the safety of drugs, products, devices. 1962 amendments to the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act paved the way for today's modern drug approval process, which involves preclinical tests on animals. The FDA can mandate drug sponsors or manufacturers to provide reports on preclinical tests, including tests on animals, and then they have to justify their proposed clinical testing or primary data tabulations from animal or human studies according to federal law. Any animal testing is necessary for understanding the safety and proper dosages of new medicines and treatments. So, if researchers find that a drug is safe and effective through animal testing, they begin testing in small groups and then larger groups. Human and animal testing is required by law before a drug can even be approved. For safety reasons, the FDA requires animal testing before there can be clinical trials, drug trials in people. It would be dangerous and extremely unethical for scientists to test drugs on humans before they make sure they are safe. So, animal research and testing is an important first step. So, I think that's interesting. If you really dig deeper into that, what that means is you're going to drug a rat, you're going to drug a non-human primate, a dog or a cat with um, a medicine. And how do you know if it was the improper dosage? It will die of an overdose. That fatality is considered part of the experimental process, right? If the drug does nothing, then they up the dosage, but they're going to do a trial and error experimentation on that animal. Um, what about the medications that vets prescribed for pets? They were developed and tested with animals too. And you can go online and find some horrifying animal testing. I don't encourage doing that. It just is so awful and distressing. So 40 reasons why we need animals in animal research. So this just kind of it just puts it all out there. Animal research has played a vital breakthrough in nearly every medical breakthrough over the last decade. Well, I would say over the last 100 years. I mean, let's throw that out there. Nearly every Nobel laureate in physiology or medicine since 1901 has relied on animal data for their research. So what's the deal with transgenic rats and mice. What's the deal with that? You're going to see an article after article where they say 95% of research animals um, are rats or mice. Um, why? Because 95% of our genes match the DNA of a mouse. So most people have no problem with that model for the human body. Now, a non-human primate, a chimpanzee, a monkey is going to share 99% of a human DNA. So you can't do all animal research with a rat and a mouse. Um, human heart transplants, non-human primate. So larger animals with larger organs were the ones experimented on and tested on for kidney, liver, heart transplants. Animals and humans are similar. They have the same organs and systems. Um, so the circulatory system in specifically, because we have a bloodstream, because medications flowing through a bloodstream and going to different organs, um, they perform the same tasks in more or less the same way. So the assumption here is whatever happens in an animal study will also happen in a human being. And animals happen to suffer from the same diseases as humans. Animals get cancer, they get flus, they get asthma, they get tuberculosis. Um, and veterinary research has relied on these animals in animal research to develop vaccines. Um, every human vaccine um, was developed using an animal experiment, including COVID-19, because it is considered, it's the law, and it's unethical and immoral to study on a human first, even if you fast track it like we did. Um, many veterinary medicines are the same as used in human patients. Antibiotics, painkillers, tranquilizers, all of these came from animal testing. Anesthetics, I'm sure you don't want to have surgery without being put to sleep. Those began in animal studies. The tetanus vaccine, penicillin, insulin, all relied on animal research for their development. Modern surgical techniques, hip replacement, knee replacement, kidney transplant, heart transplant, blood transfusion, all perfected in animals. CT, X-ray, MRI scanning, all developed using non-human animals. Thanks to animal research, primarily in mice, cancer survival rates have continued to rise. Herceptin, a humanized mouse protein, has helped to increase the survival rate of those with breast cancer. It could not have been attained without animal research in mice. Thanks to research on animals leading to the development of highly active antiretroviral therapies, AIDS is no longer the death sentence it was 30 years ago. While Fleming discovered penicillin without using animals, he shared the Nobel Prize with Florian Chain, who, by testing it on mice, discovered how penicillin could be used to fight infections inside the body. Animal research is responsible for the development of asthma inhalers. Asthma still kills around 2,000 people every year in the United Kingdom. Um, animal research is to help develop modern vaccines. Polio has been eradicated, TB, meningitis, the human papillomavirus recently. Ladies and gentlemen, you should be having the HPV vaccine because it is responsible for urinary tract and cervical cancers in women and cancers in men. The development of tamoxifen has led to 30% fall in death rates from breast cancer. Um, Dogs, cats, and primates altogether account for less than 0.2% of research animals. So, still don't like the fact that they're being used, but most of the research is done using mice. Okay, so let's go back to page 1. Animal models obviously are utilized in biomedical research when questions require a study of whole organisms that cannot ethically be carried out in humans. So, you can see why I did that first and then came back to here. Typically, animal studies are essential for research that seeks to understand complex questions, disease progression. So you're going to literally inject a mouse with cancer. Then you're going to monitor that mouse, which has a lifetime of about 2 to 3 years. And then you're going to inject them with cancer treatment drugs to see if there is any significant decrease in cancer cells. Um, it would be unethical, morally unacceptable, obviously, uh, to inject a human with cancer. The most common laboratory animal are purpose-bred rats and transgenic mice. 95% of them make up all animal studies. And the contributions made by these animals and other species help researchers answer questions of biological uncertainty. They are necessary and critical to the advancement of both human and animal health. So virtually every major medical advance in the last century, there it is, 100 years, has depended upon research with animals. Animals have served as surrogates in the investigation of human diseases and have yielded valuable data in the process of discovering new ways to treat, cure, or prevent them. Preventative being a vaccine, treatment being a drug, uh, curing being a miracle cure, and we know that they're happening. From immunizations to cancer therapy, our ability to manage the health of animals has also improved. There have been medical breakthroughs, not just in the medical field, but also the veterinary field, dogs. One of the most significant results of our partnership with dogs has been their contribution to the understanding of disease, how to prevent and cure it. Dogs and people get many of the same diseases, from heart diseases to cancer. I lost one of my dogs. Here's my babies. Here's my doggie, my cat. Here's my other cat. I'm at home today. Um, yeah, did not think she would go that fast, but she did. Rodents don't bother me. I'm guessing they didn't bother you in the video either. So I'm okay with animal research studies with rodents. But here's the thing about rodents. They're a great species because they only live 2 to 3 years. So you can look at cancer in that rodent's entire lifespan. Let me give you an analogy. My mother-in-law has had a blood cancer since my daughter was 1. My daughter is 27. Yes, my mother-in-law has been living with a blood cancer for 26 years because of medical breakthroughs, infusion treatments that she gets every month into her blood. They have kept her alive. Um, those would not have been possible without animal testing. And there's no way, and my mother-in-law is now 86 years old, there's no way we can glean the amount of information we need if we have to wait 86 years, or in her case, 27 years or 26 years. That's how long she's been diagnosed with cancer. In a rat, since it only lives 2 to 3 years, we can see the entire lifespan and how cancer has affected it, and multi-generational. So how do we know if someone has a gene for, say, my dad died of colon cancer? Um, I have to get colonoscopies regularly because I have cancer in my family. So once you have someone in your family who has contracted something, whatever it may be, you're at higher risk for that genetically. Non-human primates, historically, uh, they say 1% of animals are used in research. Chimpanzees, apes, monkeys. Without them, we wouldn't have the polio vaccine. We wouldn't have blood transfusions and organ transplantation. We would not have these advances. Remember, non-human primates, 99% of our DNA. And organ size, the heart size of a primate is going to be similar to the heart size of a human. And in fact, the first heart transplant was from a primate. Every Nobel Prize in medicine awarded in the last 3 decades was dependent on data from animal models. 83% of the Nobel Prizes awarded for outstanding contributions to medicine have involved animal research since the program was founded in 1901, more than 100 years ago. Animal research and testing were needed for every prescription medicine available today. So it's really interesting if you've watched those commercials like for Jardiance. Jardiance is really swell. The little pill with a big story to tell. And then they have all those, okay, but it may cause numbness, it may cause diarrhea, vomiting, death. Well, how do they know that it causes that in a few people? Because it's happened in animal testing. They have to document any side effect. So we'll talk about that next week. Um, did that one. Animal research. So I want to just give you a quote from Dr. John Klingberg, a doctor of veterinary medicine. These animals are heroes. Their contribution to discovering life-saving advancements in medicine and science for pets and humans is enormous. Thanks to the last century of animal research, we have achieved life-saving treatments for people and animals. As veterinarians, we're able to treat more ailments, prevent more diseases, and that allows us to keep our pets living longer and healthier. Without animal research, millions of dogs, cats, birds, farm animals would be dead from more than 200 diseases, including anthrax, distemper, rabies, feline leukemia, canine parvovirus, um, according to the Americans for Medical Progress. Well, why does that matter to us? If you eat chicken nuggets, if you eat hamburgers, if you eat marine animals, shrimp, lobster, crab, um, research testing makes ingesting those safer. Um, those diseases are largely preventable thanks to vaccines and treatments developed in animal research. In human terms, research with animals has led to vaccinations against smallpox, measles, mumps, diphtheria, and tetanus. Every vaccine. Development of anesthesia, antibiotics, insulin, cardiac pacemakers, heart bypass surgery, surgical advancements for organ transplants, hip replacements, cataract surgery, uh, treatments for diabetes, multiple sclerosis, AIDS, and leukemia. Um, fascinating. See if there's anything. Yeah, I won't go through a couple pros. Animal testing contributes to life-saving cures and treatments. The California Biomedical Research Association states nearly every medical breakthrough in the last 100 years has resulted directly from animal research using animals. That's actually giving you an ethos. Um, Animal testing is crucial to ensure that vaccines are safe. Nikolai Petrovsky, professor in the College of Medicine and Public Health at Flinders University in Australia, said testing the coronavirus vaccines was absolutely essential. Skipping that step would have been fraught with difficulty and danger. Oh, even when they went into human testings, people died from the first COVID vaccines, the first messenger RNA vaccines. There's no adequate alternative to testing on a living whole body system. The living system, human beings and animals, are extremely complex. Just a cell in a petri dish cannot give the information that we need. We need a complex system, a central nervous system, an immune system. Animals are appropriate research studies because they are similar to human beings. This is where chimpanzees share 99% of their DNA with humans. Mice are 98% genetically similar to humans. All mammals are descended from common ancestors and have the same set of organs that function in essentially the same way with the help of a bloodstream and a central nervous system. Because animals and humans are biologically similar, they are susceptible to many of the same conditions and illnesses. When testing medicines for potential toxicity, the lives of human volunteers should not be put in danger unnecessarily. So the World Medical Association Declaration of Helsinki states human trials should be preceded, come before tests on animals. Vaccines tested on animals have saved millions of animals that would otherwise have died from rabies, distemper, feline leukemia, infectious hepatitis virus, tetanus, anthrax, and canine parvo. Um, Animal testing has been instrumental in saving endangered species from extinction. The American Veterinary Medical Association endorses animal testing to develop safe drugs. Animals often make better research for subjects than human beings because of their shorter lifespan. Laboratory mice, for example, live for only 2 to 3 years, so researchers can study the effects of treatments or genetic manipulation over a whole lifespan. This is that comparison I gave to my mother-in-law. You know, it would be 26 years of information waiting versus 2 to 3. Do you see the difference? That's not feasible in a human study. It would take too long. Um, the American Cancer Society, the American Physiological Society, the American Heart Association, the Society of Toxicology, the American Veterinary Medical Association, I'll advocate for the use of animals in scientific research. I'm going to end with this. American women use an average of 12 personal care products per day. Product safety is of great importance. Guess what? Every one of those things the average woman uses, I'm guessing men probably have that, 6 care products per day, were tested on animals first. So I want to end with this because we kind of talked about this in class. Somebody said, what is cruelty free? And I said, cruelty free is a marketing scam. Uh, I'm sorry, there is no animal testing that's cruelty free. Animal testing is experimenting on a living animal. Uh, there is no cruelty free. If you're injecting them with something, if you're confining them to a cage, that is cruel. So I think it's just this misnomer. It's this term to make people feel better about buying the product that they want. Okay, so I want to share with you no one, and I'm just going to make this really big, should be doing the third body paragraph. Now, the reason I included a third body paragraph is because I think it's astonishing that animal research has equally been impacted in a significant way with medical breakthroughs for animals. Because of animal testing. Um, I think you should note there are 3 body paragraphs, and I only gave you a packet of 8 pages. There's a lot of information in that 8 page packet. Okay, so here's what I'm looking at. I am looking to see, I can tell when you don't read the packet. Do me the courtesy of reading 8 pages. I guarantee you this is a fascinating topic. Okay. Body 1, animal research studies represent a viable option to biomedical research studies involving whole living systems where using a human being would be unethical and morally unreasonable. So this is why do we use animals anyway? Why are we testing on them in the first place? Because they answer complex questions about diseases, treatments, new medicines that we can then transfer into human clinical trials. Animals are a viable surrogate in place of humans because testing needs a whole organism that is genetically similar to us, with a different systems, with organs, because animals essentially suffer from the same diseases as humans, which means if they're genetically similar, they suffer from the same diseases, have the same systems, same organs. They're close enough for us to be able to experiment on them, and they're critical for the advancement of human and animal health. Using animals in place of humans helps scientists answer complex questions because of that similarity in DNA. This is the example of mice and rats, which are used in 95% of animal experiments because of their short lifespans, because they can live to 2 to 3 years. Scientists can observe the effects of drug treatments, DNA manipulation, not just in one generation of mice, but several. They are suited for long-term research for that reason. Mammals, dogs, monkeys, and other species have also contributed to the understanding of diseases, how to cure them, and how to prevent them from happening in the future, because animals function in the same way as humans. They are equally susceptible not just to diseases, but infections, parasites, and drug interactions. Several of the largest biomedical and health organizations in America endorse animal testing. So I really just threw in all of them, and I've already gone through all of them already. This is 7 or 8 organizations who endorse animal testing, including the American Heart Association, um, the American Diabetes Association, the World Medical Association of Declaration of Helsinki, the AVMA, the American Veterinary Medical Association. Body 2, the role of animal research testing has resulted in important medical advancements for humans. This one you're going to have to be careful on because it's going to sound like a list. They've done this, 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 this. Be careful with this one. Where did this all begin? In 1962, there was an amendment to the Federal Foods, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. This carved out a new path for the drug approval process. So really kind of I started with drugs. and devices. Before any medication can be tried, it must first be determined safe in research. This includes dosages of medicines, treatments using prescription drugs. So pretty much I started with medicine. Number two is animal research is responsible for the development of important vaccines. And then number three, biomedical animal research testing has contributed to breakthroughs. This is where, without animal testing, penicillin would never have been discovered, for which Fleming, Florey, and Chain won the Nobel Prize. Then I mentioned the Nobel Prizes. The ability of physicians to prevent disease progression and improve human health was a direct result of conclusions drawn from animal research testings. There are multiple examples which explain the treatments available to humans today, which are the direct result, typo there, of animal testing. So this is kind of a list, but you get where I connected it. In our conclusion, the end goal of using animals in biomedical research testing has always been the discovery of new medicines, the investigation of complicated mammal body systems, and the treatment of diseases. So using animals in biomedical research laboratories, while concerning to animal rights activists because of mistreatment of animals, is considered paramount to many scientists who conclude the benefits derived from them are responsible for life-saving advancements for human beings. It should be noted on December 30th, 2022, former President Joe Biden and the 117th Congress enacted legislation to limit animal testing. So basically, these laws hopefully will prevent animal testing on a huge scale. With the passing of these laws, it will reduce the number of animals utilized, as well as shutting down commercial cub petting operations, halting the use of performance-enhancing drugs in horse racing, and working to combat the massacre of sharks for their fins. A lot of animal research testing today is for profit. It is not about human medical breakthroughs. So that's what those laws were intended to limit use of. And that concludes proponents of animal testing. This is a fascinating topic. Please, I'm going to reiterate, third time. If I've taken hours to prepare this for you, please read 8 pages. I promise you, the way that you construct your outline and your essays and explain each point will be clearer and your essays will be stronger if you do that. Okay? Thank you for watching and have a great day.